Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hamblet, and I am the author of From High School to College, Steps to Success for Students with Disabilities, and also Transitioning to College, a much briefer laminated guide that a lot of people like better for their students. I am here today to show you how to research the disability accommodations and documentation guidelines at colleges that your student is considering. So I'm going to share my screen. Up. Let me start another window up here. See if I can get to that. Always something when I do these videos. There we go. There's a nice clean browser for us. And I am going to research University of New Hampshire. Disability Services. And let's see what we find. Okay. So as I have shown in a bunch of these videos, notice that the name of the office, which thank goodness Google was able to find, is Student Accessibility Services. As you are looking at colleges, it's probably the most direct way to get to them to do the search for disability services. But if you find it's called accessibility, it is the same office that you're looking for. There are offices that prefer to emphasize the word access or accessibility in their titles rather than disability. So let's have a look. Now, in the comments under this video, I'm going to provide the link to the Disability Services research chart that I have written for the book. I offer it as a free download, and it's there to help guide some of the things that you look for when you are looking at disability services for your students. So a college search should focus on all of the traditional things that any student needs to make a good match with a school. But while you're doing those searches, I strongly recommend you also start poking around disability services to get a sense of what accommodations they commonly offer. And accommodations are available at all colleges across the country. You can read my book and some of my other writings on my website for free if you want to know more about that. But there are certain basic accommodations everybody offers, such as extended time for exams, testing in a room with fewer distractions, permission to record lectures, things like that. But there are schools that will go beyond the minimum. And one way to start to figure that out is to look online. It's also important while you're looking at colleges with your student that you pay attention to the documentation requirements of what paperwork your student will need to submit in order to register with our office. So let's have a look. They have a nice welcome, which I always appreciate, and they've tried to make it very easy for students to find information. Here's how you request them, send accommodation letters to faculty. That's after you've been approved. Upload your documentation. We'll look at that in a moment. And then Clockwork Login is just the name of the system that they're using to help coordinate all of these services. So let's go over to accommodations. It's so nice that they have it so organized. And let's see what they say. So student accommodations, look at how nicely this is laid out. We have a sub-menu here of academic accommodations, exam proctoring, food allergy and dietary conditions, housing accommodations, mobility and service and emotional support, animal policy. So what I'm interested in today is the academic accommodation, since I'm a learning disabilities specialist, and this is most of what I end up focused on. Let's see if my mouse is going to cooperate today. Okay, academic accommodations. Look at this, all laid out so nicely. So these are the basics that I think you'll find at a lot of colleges. Now, the assistive technology piece is something that's not always out in front. So they have an assistive technology lab that students can use for exam accommodations, and examples of what is available there include voice to text software for dictation, read and write, which is text to speech, Zoom text for students with visual disabilities. I think the same is true for NVIDIA. I don't know if it's pronounced NVIDIA. And noise canceling headphones for students with distractions. So you can also get access to these in the student computing clusters. So I don't know if that means, I have spoken to some students who have told me that Read and Write Gold is actually available to any student, regardless of whether they're registered with the Disability Services Office. through the school's computer system. So however this works. So probably using the wrong terminology, but in other words, you don't have to be registered with the office and approved for that accommodation at some of these schools. It's just they're available, just as at certain art schools, things like Adobe Photoshop might be available to all students with their student ID. So let's see, they have an attendance policy that's not typically an ADHD or LD accommodation. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to click on that right now. Audio recording of lectures is a very common one. Students can record lectures as a means of note taking. You can do this with your laptop, your iPad, your LiveScribe pen. Use of recording is for the explicit use of accessing the material. Often a written agreement, to that effect may be used. So it's not clear to me whether this school actually loans out the things like the LiveScribe Smart Pen, but students can use what they already have in hand if they want to record. And these written agreements about how they'll use the recordings are things that I have come across before in looking at colleges. And it's basically just to make sure that students will not do anything inappropriate with the recordings. So let's talk about word processor. Students may use a word processor in situations where written expression is effective and use this as part of the accommodation. This doesn't say so, but I think what they mean is when taking an exam. Distraction reduced environment. No environment is free of distraction. I guess that's a fair statement to make. They're going to provide a testing accommodation that minimizes distraction from a larger classroom. And a distinction is made between the need for a separate room and one where other students may also be testing. Some accommodations, such as reading aloud or oral exams, require a separate space. So when your students, if they're applying to UNH, and they ask for that kind of environmental, if you will, exam accommodation, it's important for them to specify which one they're asking for then and why they would need it. So if all you need is fewer distractions, then that's probably when you would be in the reduced distraction room. Be aware that it seems, at least from here and from working at other colleges, that students don't generally get a private room for testing. There are schools that I'm aware of that actually do have testing centers, and so everybody gets access to those. But unless it's something here like having the test read aloud to them or being able to be tested orally, which is frankly not a very common accommodation, students at this school will likely, who have ADHD or anxiety, who don't have to have something where there's something, audibly going on, it seems like will be in the distraction reduced instead of private testing space. So extended time, students typically receive 50% or 100%. So for a 2-hour exam, 50% would mean 3 hours. For 100%, it would be 4 hours to accommodate processing speed, reading comprehension, all sorts of things. Online exams with timed elements are also included. So for these students who are taking classes remotely, they should be aware that they should have that extended time if they're approved for it. Note-taking assistance. Notes may be available to the entire class, which through faculty posting their notes and materials, using a classroom lecture capture system. I don't know if that is a transcript. Use of a TA or a grad assistant to take notes, or community of learning where students share note-taking responsibility and create a shared pool of notes. If you still need a note taker, the office will utilize the class roster to solicit a peer note taker or hire, for hire or volunteering, and volunteer hours would be tracked. So it seems like they will provide note takers where necessary, but it seems like they're also trying to make sure students access whatever's already available to them first. Preferential seating allows the student to sit near the instructor or interpreter or near the exit if you need to be able to go take a break due to your disability. Priority registration puts students to the top of their registration group. And my guess is that means, for instance, that a freshman who gets priority registration is put to the top of the freshman time slots, but not ahead, let's say, of the seniors. So if you have questions about that, you should ask the school what it means. A reduced course load. Students who require fewer credit hours due to the nature of the disability are eligible for 25% reduction to the block tuition rate. And it has to be established prior to the 5th Friday each semester. So this is something that's a great opportunity for students who perhaps need to take fewer courses and have fewer things to do, as I talk about and mention all the time when I speak. Extended time for papers and projects is not a typical accommodation for students with learning disabilities and ADHD. And if you go to my blog, there is, let me make myself a note. There's bonus content from my book where disability services directors talk about the accommodations they do and also that they don't commonly approve. And they discuss the situations in which that extended time for papers and projects is approved, and it's a very narrow circumstance for a select group of students, but it's not typically students with learning disabilities and ADHD. Therefore, reduced course load can be a great way, at least when they start college, to kind of ramp up as they adjust to the expectations there, the lack of structure at college, which is a challenge, you know, for neurotypical as well as neurodiverse students too. Sign language or CART is not for our students with learning disabilities and ADHD, and textbook and print materials in alt format. Let's see, audio, e-text, large print braille. Students request that through SAS, through their office. There are also other options to get the information that you need, such as Amazon, Bookshare, Audible. When necessary, the office will work with publishers to obtain the text materials in accessible format. And if not, they're going to take the book that you bought at the bookstore, cut it, scan the pages, and then they often will return the book to students, you know, rubber banded together, which is a little bit sad. But yeah, if the book is not already available through Bookshare or through Learning Ally, and the publisher doesn't create a an e-version, then they will make sure that it gets scanned with the right software so that your text-to-speech software can read it aloud. Keep in mind, again, that colleges are not required to give students copies of the software that they need to do that. We just have to make sure that the materials you need for your class are in a format that can be read by that. Then again, as this school shows, they have access to read and write in their computer labs and also in their assistive technology lab. So speaking of assistive technology, before we get off of accommodations, I want to check out assistive technology, excuse me. So what is it? And they have a lab. Students who visit the lab have access to workstations equipped with all the software that's in the student computing clusters, in addition to a variety of software programs. So they have workstations that are height adjustable. They have, here are all of the programs that they offer. They can also demonstrate and loan you a smart pen, and also Sonocent. This is one, this note-taking software is something I hear mentioned a lot. There's a video magnifier for students with visual disabilities, classroom listening systems for students with hearing disabilities, technology enhanced classrooms. Can't even figure out what that is. And look, they have an equipment demonstration and loan program. There's an online equipment database where you can browse the inventory. This seems to be through a state assistive technology initiative. So I love that they're connecting you to them. And this is a project of the UNH Institute on Disability and provides training, education, and outreach programs. So what's really nice is if they can not only loan you the smart pen, which again, colleges don't have to do. If you get permission to record your classes, all that means is you have permission. The device that you use to do that is going to be something you have to purchase on your own, but some colleges do buy those smart pens and loan them out. All right, so lots of good information on this site. Let's look at their documentation guidelines. Okay, they serve both students with permanent and temporary disabilities. In establishing your disability, your documentation can include your own self-report, professional judgment, third-party assessments, and reports. So let's see if they have something specific to learning disabilities or ADHD. They do not. So they discuss who is an individual with a disability, what is a substantial limitation of a major life activity. And this is, I'm sure, information that comes from the law. See, they have the definition from the Americans with Disabilities Act. They talk about the substantial limitation part of the definition. Obtaining accommodations, you would contact them, start the process before the beginning of the semester, always a good idea. And they talk a little bit about appropriate accommodations. Let's see. So it seems like so far there isn't any specific guidelines, but let's keep going. What's the purpose of documentation? To establish protection from discrimination, determine the accommodations. Let's see. Okay, so here's what they say should be in quality disability documentation. So this comes from the Association for Higher Ed and Disability, which is an organization I belong to for people like me who work in my field. So notice that it says the credentials of the evaluator, diagnostic statement identifying the disability, description of the diagnostic methodology used, diagnostic criteria and evaluation methods, a description of the functional limitations, a description of the expected progression or stability of the disability. Will it change over time? And situation, a description of the current and past accommodations, and recommendations for accommodations. So far it appears that they don't, unlike some of the other colleges I've shown in the Facebook group, it appears that they don't have very specific documentation guidelines about in general, and not as some schools do for certain types of disabilities. Let me see what they say about foundational principles. So again, this comes from ahead that everything gets reviewed on an individual or case-by-case basis. Determination of disability doesn't require the use of language. Presented documentation can be augmented. So they are taking a very open approach to what students are providing. I don't see anything here that says it has to be a psychoeducational evaluation or a neuropsychological evaluation. It seems like they might be willing to accept, as some schools will, an IEP or a 504 as standalone documentation. If you are new to my work and just watching this video, be aware that that is not the case at all colleges. And at the same time, what you've heard about schools that won't accept documentation that isn't a full psychoed or a full neuropsych that's 3 years old or fewer, is true at some schools, but not at all of them. Last week, I did a review of a school that said within 5 years. So you do have to do this research. And by clicking around, you can find it. So if you were a student interested in the University of New Hampshire and you wanted to make sure before you sent in your documentation that you had what they needed, you could call them. It seems to me from looking at this that they are pretty open to things. So I'm just gonna see, let's see, you can upload your documentation here. There doesn't seem to be anything else about what you need to provide. So this seems to me like a school that's really open to anything. But while we are here, one of the things I also encourage families to do is to take a look around and see what else there is as far as supports, because again, as I talk about in my work, colleges don't have to provide specialized tutoring or access to a learning disability specialist or somebody like that to students that register with the disability services offices. They can choose to do so, and some of them do. Some of them do so for a fee through a structured program. Others may do it informally. They may do it, I've seen that the University of Massachusetts at Amherst has a learning specialist that students can see. I think it's for about 6 months at a time. I'm sorry, 6 months period. So these are things to look at. So while we're on this page, I wanted to just see what else it says for students. Let's see, when to establish yourself with the organization, I'm sorry, with the office, excuse me. You're going to make contact really as soon as you can. There's stuff on how they send their letters. Strategies for success. Let's see what they say. These are just sort of general ideas about how to be successful at college, develop self-advocacy skills. And I'm sorry to be scrolling through. You can always come and see. Here's the URL if you want to look at this more closely. Advising in course selection. That's something I don't usually see. Talks about disclosing to an academic advisor. One thing to keep in mind when we talk about things schools don't have to do. They don't have to provide specialized academic advising to students, and certainly students are welcome to tell their own academic advisor. Usually as a freshman, you get assigned to somebody, and then as you choose a major, you'll probably choose an advisor within that department. They are not required to get training on disabilities, so students, may need to educate them if they think that it's important for their advisors to know something about themselves. By the same token, they also don't have to if they don't wish to and they don't think it's important. So they provide some ideas for things. And this is really interesting. I've not seen this before. What do you think an academic advisor should know to help you put together a schedule? What is important to you in choosing your classes? I love this. I don't usually see this. Is math an area of difficulty? Here are some ways to handle it. Also on my site, I have two links for you. One about how to handle challenging courses, and another about foreign language and math substitutions for college students. There's information for students who are currently enrolled already, which is what currently means. But if they're already in there and they haven't yet asked for a substitution, what they should do and think about as they do that. And also there's one for high school students who are applying, or even at the freshman level of high school, thinking about taking a waiver at the high school level and how that can affect things for college. Let's see, what do they offer for academic assistance? All right, so there is get help from your course professor, meet with your academic advisor. If your course has a teaching assistant, see them. This is what I'm trying to get to, tutoring. Students on campus may offer fee-based tutoring privately. You can also post, but there's a writing center. There's a math assistance center. There's the programming assistance center, I guess that's for computer people, and the Center for Academic Resources. So again, it doesn't seem like the office itself offers any kinds of supports, but of course they do have, as most colleges do, a tutoring center. So here we go. And let's see what we need to know. Schedule an appointment. They have educational counselors. Let's see. What does an educational counselor do? I am not really sure. Okay, maybe we'll come back to that. But let's see what they have about the Center for Academic Resources. They are open. You can schedule appointments. They have academic mentors that teach students how to study smarter, not harder, develop time management plans. I love to see this. So what's so interesting about this for students with disabilities is this is not something you need to access through the Disability Services Office. You don't need special permission to get it. They just have students already prepared. You might want to ask, if your student is interested in this, what kind of training these students go through, how they choose those tutors, anything else that might be of interest to your students in understanding more about the mentoring. Let's see what else we have. We have academic mentors. We have a finals toolkit. Fantastic. Doesn't seem to be. There we go. They have tips for exam preparation, motivation, study strategies for specific classes. I mean, boy, could I have used that chemistry study strategy back when I was in high school. Okay, subject area tutoring. This is something too, again, that doesn't typically go through our office. So students may qualify for free tutoring through TRIO support services. So what's interesting about this is it doesn't seem like they offer tutoring for specific classes. So at some schools, there may be tutors for French and biology, but it seems like here they are providing more general resources like the academic mentors. Um, so that is something that you need to talk to your student about. Do they want to be able to get free tutoring support services directly from a center like this? If not, it seems like they're going to have to pay for it. Let's see what their STEM resources look like. So somebody's obviously curated all of these resources for certain classes. That's not something I see a lot. TRIO and student support services. For students who have been traditionally underrepresented in higher ed, they have a program partially funded by the U.S. Department of Ed, and they can receive subject area tutoring, help with FAFSA, budgeting, career and major exploration, individual counseling, coaching for students with disabilities. So I'd be interested in knowing what that was. If my student was looking at this, I'd ask specific questions about what that coaching looks like. Coaching and support for homeless youth, wonderful services. So again, it seems like, oh, here we go, coaching for students with disabilities. Let's get the details. Let's see. Do they define what a learning disability is? It's not unusual for students to question whether they have a disability. If you think you have it, you can meet with somebody there. She'll explore options with you and explain the testing process. Be aware that at most colleges, and it still seems like here, you have to pay for testing yourself. So if you got to UNH and had never been identified as having a disability, but now wonder if you have one, you probably do have to pay for it yourself. Let's see. They say that if you're looking to be tested, let's follow the link. And this is open another window, so I don't know. Let me get the link here and put it somewhere else. So it looks like they do testing. Sorry, they don't do testing, but they will refer you out to other folks for testing. Let's go back to this. So it's not clear to me entirely how this works in with TRIO and what they do. But that also brings up another important question. So we've been looking at academic supports, and I'm going to back up to academic assistance. Oh, I'm back at the Disability Services Office. Campus resources and offices is, I think, an important thing to click on. Who can they connect you to? So there is Accessible UNH, which usually is a supports for students with disabilities of all kinds. We have compliance. We have Center for Academic Resources, which we just looked at. The library, health and wellness. So psych and counseling services is something I think it can be helpful to look at too. This is not my area, but at least they do have counseling online. What are their services? They do treatment recommendations and referrals, crisis intervention, individual counseling. So this is not my area, but if that's something for your student, you would want to ask some questions about individual counseling. How many times a week can they see somebody? How long can they see? A lot of colleges, students have a certain number of months they can see somebody in the counseling center before they will refer them out. And that's an important question to ask. So I will post the links to the pages that I mentioned in the comments here. I hope you found this helpful. This is stuff you can do. As you can see, it doesn't take very long, and I promise you by the third school you look at, you'll have a much better sense of what to be looking for and where to click. If you can't find information that you're searching for, always call the Disability Services Office. They'll be happy to answer questions for you. Don't worry about whether they're going to ask you whether the students are applying there. They're just there to answer questions about their services. They have nothing to do with admissions at most schools. If you're worried about that, you can also ask them. You can give them a fake name, whatever you want to do. Anyway, check out my website and consider ordering my book for a lot more detailed discussion of all of this stuff. Thanks so much.